Okay, welcome to Objective 2 in the Foundations Unit 7 Study Guide. We're looking at question number 5. It says, what is the smallest of three consecutive positive integers if the product of the smaller two integers is 5 less than 5 times the largest integer? Okay, keyword here, consecutive positive integers. So you have an option. You need to use n plus 1, n plus 2, because there's three numbers, or you need to use n plus 2, n plus 4. So how do you know the difference? Well, this is just integers, and this is even or odd. Okay, so does it say the words even or odd anywhere in here? No. So then we do not use this one. These will be the three integers that we use. Okay, and it wants to know what is the smallest of them. So remember, your final answer will be what does n equal? That's going to be the smallest of those three numbers. Okay? So now it says if the product means multiply, okay, of the smaller two integers. So we have three integers, small, medium, large. This one's going to be small, s. This is going to be smaller than that one. So these are our two smaller ones. So we're going to multiply n and n plus 1. Well, that's n times n plus 1. Okay? Is. Is means equals. So that's going to equal 5 less than 5 times the larger integer. Well, you see less than, that's subtract 5. 5 less than. You would think that's 5 minus, but because of this word than, it actually means we're going to subtract 5. So that's 5 less than, which means minus 5. 5 less than what? 5 times the largest integer, which means multiply. Okay? So we're going to do 5 multiplied by the largest. Well, the largest is n plus 2. So we're going to do 5 times n plus 2. Okay? So now you just multiply this out. You got n times n and n times 1. So it gets n squared plus 1n equals, okay, do it again, 5n, 5 times n and 5 times 2, so you get 5n plus 10, and then the minus 5 will come down. Okay? So now when you're seeing this, you got an equation, you got letters and numbers and stuff. You see this square right here. Whenever you see a square inside of an equation, everything's got to come to the side with the square. Okay? So we're going to move this 5n, this 10, and this minus 5 all to one side. Okay? So I'm going to subtract 5n first from both sides. And so I get n squared, and then really that's a 1. 1 minus 5 is negative 4n equals 10 minus 5. Well, what is 10 minus 5? It's 5. So these two combine to give me, these two numbers right here, 10 minus 5 combine to give me a 5, equals an n squared minus a 4n. So now I need to move this to this side. So I'm going to subtract 5. And when I go to subtract 5, I can't subtract it from this, and I can't subtract it from this, because this is an n squared, and I don't have an n squared. This is an n, and I don't have an n, so it has nothing. So I just kind of attach it to the end. Okay? So I get n squared minus 4n, and then the minus 5 will come in, and it equals, and then 5 minus 5 is 0. So now I'm going to try to x factor, okay? Or I could do the quadratic formula, or I could graph it. It's whichever method that you've chosen that you like to do and that you're the best at. But in this particular case, this is a really simple factoring question, so I would suggest factoring, and it'll be the fastest. You put the negative 5 on the top, and you put the negative 4 on the bottom. 5 times 1 is 5, and then we have a negative here. So then you get n equals, not n equals. You do the parentheses, and you go n minus 5, and then n plus 1 equals 0, because we got to solve it. Okay, so you get n equals 5 and n equals -1. And that's by setting each of these equal to 0 and then solving. So you'd add 5 to both sides, that's why it's positive 5, or you subtract 1 to both sides, and you get -1. So now let's go back to the answers, because you can't have two answers. It says which one's the smallest of the positive integers. Which ones of these is positive? That's 5. Okay, and remember our answer will be n, so n is 5. 5 is our answer. Okay, that would be the smallest number of these three. Okay, and it had to be positive 5 and not -1 because it asked for positive integers. So if I was going to solve this by the quadratic formula, I would do, remember, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then to look in here, my a equaled 1, my b equaled -4, and my c equaled -5. Okay? I got that from this equation right here at the bottom, and we got it equal to 0. Because everything has to be done when it's equal to 0. So now I go, the opposite of -4 is +4, plus or minus the square root of -4 squared minus 4 times 1 times -5, close parentheses. So now all over 2 times +1. Okay? Now you do what's in here. So you get 16 plus 20. 16 plus 20 is 36, plus or minus 4 all over 2 times 1 is 2. Square root of 36 is 6. So you get 4 plus or minus 6 over 2. Okay, so that's 4 plus 6 over 2 and 4 minus 6 over 2. And so that's 10 over 2, which is 5. Or you got 4 minus 6, which is -2 over 2, which is -1. So you have 5 or -1. 5 has to be the answer, which is what we had here, because it needs to be the positive integer. Okay? And then via graphing, you could have done the calculator. You go to y equals, oops, got to turn it on. Go to y equals, clear everything out. Go back up to the top, do x squared minus 4x minus 5. Okay, all I did was type it in. And then you could go down and you could press 0. You go to second calc, and we need where it intersects, number 5. Okay, and then you'll be able to see it also. You see here it crosses at -1 and it crosses at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, but it says first curve, you press enter, You want to guess. Remember, we want to make sure we go to the one that we think it is, so we're going to guess as close as we can. Right there. Bam. And then you get 5. So the n was 5, there's 5. So you've seen it all three ways that you could possibly do it. Okay? Question number 6, the triangle question. Okay? So now it says the altitude is 5 less than the base. The area is 42 square inches. Find the altitude. So the thing you need to know is altitude and height are basically the same thing. Okay? Altitude is like it goes from the vertex and forms a right angle, whereas the height is just the right angle of a triangle. It doesn't necessarily have to go from the vertex to the middle of the base. Okay? So the height is going to be the altitude, okay? And it says here the altitude or the height is 5 inches less than the base. So you have the base. Does it tell us what specifically the base is? No. So we're just going to call that B. Okay? And it says the altitude or the height is 5 inches less than that. So let's say that the base was 12 and you did 5 inches less than that. You'd get 7, right? Because you did 12 minus 5 and got 7. So that means that the height or the altitude would be the base, whatever it was, minus 5. Okay? And so it says the area is 42 square inches. Well, remember, area is 1/2 base times height, or base times height over 2. Either one of those works. So whichever one you like to do. Most people like this one. So I'm going to go with this one. Okay? So base is just the b times the height, or parentheses times the height, which is b minus 5 over 2 equals the area, which is the area they said was 42. So we do 42 here. Okay? So now, most of y'all don't like fractions, so how do you get rid of a fraction? Well, that says divide by 2, so you're going to multiply by 2. And so you get base times base minus 5 equals 42 times 2, which is 84. And then you're going to multiply this out. You get b squared minus 5b equals 84. And then we're going to notice that we have a square, and so we need everything on one side or to get this equal to 0. So we're going to subtract 84 from both sides. I can't subtract it from b squared because I don't have a b squared. I can't subtract it from b because I don't have a b. So I just kind of put it off to the side. We're going to like wedge it in right there. Okay? And so you're going to get b squared minus 5b minus 84 equals 0. Okay? And just like when we've solved anything else that was a quadratic, you can do it by the factoring method, you can do it by quadratic formula, okay? Or you can do it by graphing. Whichever method is the best and easiest for you, that's what you're going to do. So I'm going to show you do it by factoring. I think I've showed you enough by quadratic formula and by graphing that you should have a good concept. If not, just flip back to the other questions and see if you can pick up where I messed up, okay? Or not where I messed up, where I solved those questions like that, okay? Okay, so we do the x method. You put a times c, which is 1 times negative 84, up on the top, and the basement goes on bottom. So now we go to try to complete the x, and 7 times 12 will give me 84, and then 7 minus 12 will give me a negative 5, and 7 times negative 12 is negative 84, which is what we need. Okay, so then I go and I write b plus 7 and b minus 12 equals 0, so b equals negative 7 or b equals 12. And so since I can't have my base being a negative 7, it can only be 12. So go back to your original question. It says find the altitude of this question. Well, if b equals 12, then b equals 12 minus 5, which equals 7. And what do you know? I actually predicted that in the beginning by accident. So the altitude is 7. And let's just double check what that is. So remember, the area equals 1/2 the base times the height. So that equals 1/2. Our base is 12 times the height of 7. What's half of 12? That's 6 times 7, which is 42, and our area was 42. So we must be right. Okay? On to question number 7. It says the length of the rectangle is 4 more than the width. Find the dimensions if the area is 96 square inches. Well, remember, area equals length times width of a rectangle. Okay? And so let's just label our sides. So we have the length here, we have the width here. Okay? And so it says the length of a rectangle is, which means equals, 4 more than the width. Okay, so the length is based on the width. Well, does it tell us what the width is? No. So the width will stay W. And the length is, which means equals, 4 more than, or 4 plus the width. So it would be the width plus 4. You say, Mr. Polk, why did you switch that around? Well, it's that keyword, than. Just like when we did the less than, it meant 5 less than meant minus 5. 4 more than means plus 4. And it's just that, the English way of saying than. Okay? And so, how do you find the area? Okay? Well, the area, remember, is length times width. So I really have W plus 4 times W equals our area, which is 96. And so I get 96 equals W squared plus 4W. Well, I see that square in there. I know I need to get everything to one side, so I need to subtract that 96. Subtract 96 from both sides. That gives me my 0, which is what I need. W squared plus 4W minus 96. Okay? Alright, and so now I'm going to go x factoring to solve, or you could do the quadratic formula, or you could graph. And you get negative 96 on top, and you get 4 on bottom. I need the numbers that will multiply to give me 96, or negative 96, and add to give me a 4. Well, that's an 8 and a 12. And since I need a negative and a positive to make a negative, one of these has got to be negative. The bigger number is going to be what this is, so that's going to be a positive, and this is going to be a negative. And so then you write W minus 8, and W plus 12 equals 0. Since we don't have a number in front, we don't have to divide anything, and you get W equals positive 8 and W equals negative 12. Can't have a negative width, so the width will be 8. So this is 8, and that's 8 plus 4, which equals 12. So you have 8 and 12. And as for the dimensions, which is the length and the width, so the length equals 12 inches, and the width equals 8 inches. Okay? On to the last question of this objective. Okay? Some would say this is the most difficult, but it's not really that difficult. Now, I've provided you two shapes here so you can see the transition from one to the other. You only need to use one if you want to, or you can use both, or you can use none. It was just there to be a visual aid for you to see what had actually happened. So it says if the measure of one side of a square is, so let's take brain dump what we know about squares. All sides are the same, so if you knew one side, then you knew all sides. Does it tell us what the side actually is in the entire question? Okay? So you've read the question already. What does one side of the square equal? Well, it doesn't say. Some of y'all would say 3. No, it says the side's increased by 3. You say, well, 3. No, it says decreased by 3. 40. No, the area is 40. It doesn't actually tell us. So if we don't know, where do we put? An X. So this side will be X. Well, what about this side? Well, it's a square. What do all squares have? The same sides all the way around. So this is X, this is X, this is X. Okay? So it says if one side is increased by, which means added by, 3 centimeters, which to result in this new one, so this would be the new rectangle. Okay, which one do you think would be increased by 3? This side or this side? It would definitely be this side. So they took this side, which used to be X, and they increased it by 3. And the adjacent side, so if this is one side, the adjacent side would be either this side or this side. The adjacent means the one that's touching it. Okay? They took that and they decreased it by 3. So it now became X minus 3. So this one would be X plus 3, and this one would be X minus 3. The area of the resulting rectangle is this one, is 40. Well, how do you find area? That's length times width. Okay? And so I'm going to take my length, which is X plus 3, and I'm going to multiply it by my width, which is x minus 3, and that's going to equal 40. That's my length, that's my width, that's my area. Okay, length times width equals area. So then you get x squared plus, or here, let's do it. When you multiply these, you need to distribute. So these two will multiply, and tell you what, let's do this in blue. So you got x times x, which is x squared. You've got x times negative 3, which is negative 3x. You've got 3 times x, which is positive 3x. And then you've got 3 times negative 3, which is negative 9. Don't forget your like terms in the middle, and so you'll end up with x squared. Negative 3 plus 3 cancels out, minus 9 equals 40. Okay, so then you see you got a square. You want to get them both sides, everything on the one side, and set it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 40 from both sides. Okay, and so you get x squared minus 49 equals 0. For those of you that don't know, that's a difference of perfect squares, because 7 times 7 is 49, and x times x is x squared. So there's a shortcut method. Whenever you see subtraction and perfect square, you just draw two parentheses, equals 0. What will multiply to give you x squared? Well, that's an x times an x. What will multiply to give you 49? That's a 7 and a 7. And you just put a plus and a minus. And so you get x equals negative 7 or x equals positive 7. And since it's got to be positive, 7. Okay? So this one can't work. If you needed to do the x, a is 1, C is 49, it's actually negative 49, so you get negative 49 on top, and then B is 0. We don't have a B. What will multiply to give you a 49 and give you 0 when you subtract them? Well, 7 minus 7 is 0. 7 times negative 7, 49. So that's where the plus 7 and the minus 7 came from. Okay? But that's not what it asks for. It says find the perimeter of the rectangle. So we come here, if we know x is 7, so we go in and plug that in. That becomes 7. That's a 7. That's a 7. And that's 7. And so you end up with 10. That's 10. And this is 4. And this is 4. So 4 plus 4 is 8. 10 plus 10 is 20. 20 plus 8, 28. Okay? So 28 becomes our final answers, and it'd be centimeters. Okay? Will be our final answer. And this concludes Objective 2 for the Unit 7 study.